Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. Once again, we're going to move another week down the information train. The great thing is that we are building this reference library for you, so as you go through the units and sort of catch up to this information, at least the recorded webinars are there for you to be able to reference and go back to as you go through your evidence requirements. So tonight's subject, TAEDEL404A, Mentor in the Workplace. Obviously, once again, we'll go through an overview of tonight's topics, and then we'll present the information, and then obviously a Q&A at the end. However, I'm always happy to look at you guys being able to ask questions as we go. I think it makes for a much better interactive environment. And an interesting development, guys, not anything to do with what we're going to be talking about tonight, but while it is in my brain, today I discovered another program virtually identical to Kahoot, but with an ability to remotely run your topics. So you could get your students all online at the same time, and they would be able to see the questions and the answers wherever they are all over the world as you host the event, which is one thing that we, like I said, the Kahoots found a little bit difficult too, and you normally have to organize it through Skype. But I'll let you guys know about that program on Saturday. Hopefully, Alex, you can edit all that out. But I just needed to share that because I was quite excited for these guys discovering this new program. Alrighty, let's get going. So tonight we're going to look at the unit itself. We'll have a mentoring overview. We'll have a look at the assessment requirements. Within mentoring itself, we're going to identify what is and how to mentor and what a mentoring relationship is. Then at the end, we'll look at the requirements of mentoring programs in a formal situation. And obviously, like I said, a Q&A, but you can always Q&A as you go. Hi, Di. Cool. So chapter 1 is the unit of competence itself. This unit describes the performance outcome, skill and knowledge required to establish and develop a professional mentoring relationship with a learner, in particular an apprentice or trainee employed by or undertaking work placement in a workplace. It includes establishing the need for mentoring, developing a mentoring plan and framework, facilitating and monitoring the mentoring relationship, and evaluating the effectiveness of mentoring. Hi, Nav. Adi, Matt, and hello, Adrienne. For the assessment for this unit of competence, you'll need to plan, facilitate, and provide information on mentoring sessions. You'll need to deliver the mentoring sessions, and you'll need to review and report and attach your portfolio. So for the driving instructors, really easy. You guys can establish your whole mentoring system around your learn to drive lessons. Matt, you can actually do it around the work that you do with our students on a Friday, and your role within ITS, without a doubt, you play a mentoring role. And at the same time too, for Tristan, he could even probably look at some of the mentoring and that he does within his workplace. And Di, I actually even, if correct me if I'm wrong, Di, but I think you actually may do training in that with, I keep on thinking you do work with youth at risk, but I'm not sure. But I feel like within your explanation of your job roles over the years that you may have done some mentoring along the journey. Either way, the actual assessment's probably one of the easier assessments. You follow a template, and the great thing is the question and answer part, there's only 11 questions. It's one of the more straightforward units of competence and assessments. It's not too difficult and cool. I thought so, Di, that you'd spoken about that in previous conversations. So first up, I guess we're always got to ask ourselves, what is mentoring? So mentoring has been defined in several ways, and many of us have had experience of being mentored, even if initially we did not realize this. Myself, as you guys know, I have other qualifications like virtually all of us, other work experience or qualifications beyond the running of ITS, and before that being a driver trainer and all that sort of stuff. So many years ago, I did actually an apprenticeship within horticulture. I had an elderly gentleman that was absolutely my mentor through those years of my apprenticeship. He played an incredibly important role for me through that apprenticeship. It was a non-formal arrangement as a mentor, but without a doubt, without his guidance, I probably wouldn't have even got through the qualification. So he used to give me a lift to and from work, and we used to at different times work together, and definitely I still value that relationship today. And I know that even myself, in my job role, there are times that I try to model myself on the approach and the way that this gentleman named Bruce, he's now no longer with us, but the way Bruce worked with me as a mentor through my apprenticeship, I still try to use those principles today. It was again, it's a really good mentor, can have a lifelong positive effect on those on their mentees. So some of these experiences may have been quite planned and formal. Other experiences have been rather spasmodic or even unexpected, yet made a profound impact on our lives. Still, other occasions may have seen us more in a position of mentoring another. If we look at the actual definition of what mentoring is, it says it's an alliance of two people that creates a space for dialogue that results in definition, action, and learning for both. So it's I guess what they're trying to highlight there, that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Typically, it is a one-to-one relationship between a more experienced and a less experienced employee. It is based upon encouragement, constructive comments, openness, mutual trust, respect, and a willingness to share. And I think those sorts of qualities that they're talking about there, I sincerely hope that that's what you've found with your dealings with myself and Matt and Alex and the other people that make up ITS. I'm hoping that that's because we certainly see our roles as helping you guys develop the skills and create the evidence for the qualifications that we deliver, but at the same time take on a bit of a mentoring role for you, not just during your time with us through the course, but well and truly after that as you enter industry. And as everyone knows, we probably take as many phone calls from past students a day as we do for people wanting to become driving instructors or wanting to do any of our other courses. Always there ready to render assistance to those who need it. A final definition of mentoring is that someone who shares knowledge, skills, information, and perspective to foster the personal and professional growth of someone else. And a mentor provides assistance, support, advice, and encouragement to the learner throughout the learning experience. Now, to absolutely define what is not mentoring, because we have worked out what it is, it really is important to work out what it isn't. And what it isn't is supervision. So mentoring is not supervision. And it's not only role modeling. As we've said through the previous comments, there's a lot more to it. Mentoring involves direct assistance of career planning and professional development through teaching, counselling, role modeling, providing support, protecting, promoting, and or sponsoring. So it's all those facets rolled into the mentoring role. It's not just supervision, and certainly not just role modeling. Social capital. So social capital is a term that is sometimes grouped with mentoring. Social capital in its mainstream conceptualization has been portrayed as the active stock of connections among people. So, oh my God, what is that? What are they trying to say there? What they're really saying is that we all know, and and it even harks back to that information last week when I was talking about connected meaning and all that sort of stuff, is that what we know is that in large-scale workplaces and within learning environments, and especially, in some of the one-to-one training environments that we can find ourselves in, the whole relationship thing and the value of the relationship that people have with one another completely and utterly underpins success within any mentoring role, within any sort of successful workplace. Workplaces that have, and can't always get everyone to like each other and whatever the case may be, but anytime we can have as happy as possible workplaces based on people having positive relationships, it's a winner for everyone. And especially when we look at people taking on mentoring roles, those more experienced, helping those new through the door develop a comfort and space and place within that workplace. So social capital is embedded in people's interactions with one another and embodies trust, cooperation, reciprocity, mutual understandings, and shared values. A key assertion of social capital is that interactions enable people to build communities, commit themselves to one another, and knit the social fabric of their collective being. Again, this is really good HR talk, but it's just about, people within the workforce all respecting one another and like I said, with a bit of luck, like each other, but more than anything, having a relationship of trust and mutual respect. At the core of both mentoring and social capital are relationships. Relationships and networks can be strengthened by trust and knowledge, which facilitate reciprocity. I'm just going to say it like that tonight. Reciprocal and cooperation for mutual benefit of the network group. It becomes pretty clear why big business loves mentoring and tries to implement mentoring programs. The benefits of their workforce and ultimate business success has been measured all the way back to the dividend paid to the shareholder. And when it's done correctly, everyone benefits. And it really is that, guys. I've read quite a bit of research over the journey into this stuff, and it really is about, and obviously all you guys know this as well, but we know that in any training role or any mentoring role or even in any workforce, the moment we get this social cohesion and a happy workforce, the whole organization benefits. And I know that a lot of people that work within OH&S areas try to get this going, because obviously occupational health and safety would be underpinned by people caring about themselves and their fellow workers and actively being conscious of anything they do or don't do could harm someone that they really appreciate, like, and respect and care for within the workplace. So obviously, not only is there benefits within any mentoring program creating better, more efficient workers, but even the safety benefits. And like I said, as this statement says here, all the way back to the dividend that shareholders end up enjoying at the end of a financial year with some of these massive businesses, comes back to this sort of social, not social engineering, but this social cohesion. Warning: just because mentoring sounds great, it doesn't mean it's easy. And too many people that make that mistake. And it is true. Mentoring is not a really easy, straightforward process. It's simple in its concept, but it can be a little bit difficult in its application. So effective mentoring relationships embody qualities of trust, cooperation and commitment, honesty, goodwill and good questions, confidentiality, respect, chemistry, encouragement, active listening. It embodies time, the time you put into one another, and again, that reciprocal behavior to one another. As we all reflect on these qualities, consider how they relate to your own experiences. On the notion of reciprocity in a mentoring relationship, what do you believe and or have experienced to be benefits of mentoring for the mentors, the mentees, and workplace organizations? So again, I'm going to take a time out for a moment. I'll repeat that one for you. But as it says there, as we all reflect on these qualities, the qualities I just mentioned from the previous slide, consider how they relate to your own experiences within your own workplace or work life. And on that notion of reciprocity in a mentoring relationship, what do you believe you've experienced that have been benefits? And when I think about my really clear mentoring relationship I had through my apprenticeship, I know that I benefited greatly from Bruce's wisdom and being a sounding board and all that sort of stuff. And I know he absolutely benefited from my youthfulness and my, I guess, new perspective to the workplace and what I brought to that relationship. And I know for myself, because I'd come from a family where my father had a business and I'd moved into a workforce where everyone had mainly been employees, that because I had been immersed in an environment where obviously my family were employers, it was interesting that I had some sort of clear views that none of those guys had even thought about, even though I was the young teenager only entering the workplace for the first time. But obviously my exposure through my dad's business, and that was good for him and that was good for me. And within the workplace organization, they definitely got a better functioning apprentice and a happier, older worker through the fact that we had such a positive relationship, and we used to do great work together. Anyone, and even for me, I can, even as a small side note, on the corner of Sydney Road and Bell Street, one of the busiest intersections in the northern suburbs, there's a church with a park. Within that park is large, tall gum trees. Myself and Bruce planted those trees. We were the only two who worked on that whole project. And even till this day, whenever I drive past that particular corner, I know those trees are a reflection of my relationship and the positives that came out of that through the workplace. So yeah, everyone benefited, including all those people that get to enjoy those trees each day. So benefits to mentees include personal growth and self-development plans, support in developing and implementing targeted development activities, enhanced likelihood for success, development of specific skills and knowledge, and deepened understanding of organisation. And without a doubt, completely and utterly, that was for me. Understanding, quite clueless about a workplace, like a council/type workplace, but Bruce's influence and me being the mentee, definitely he was able to fast track me through that understanding of how places like that operate. Expanded vision, extended networks and support systems, enhanced communication and interpersonal skills, improved promotion opportunities, and enhanced status and sense of standing. And once again, if you guys have had ever a mentoring type relationship where you were the mentee, you're the person being guided by someone else in the workplace, then hopefully for you, when I read these things out, the warm and fuzzies are coming back, because you can say, yep, you know what? They were the benefits that these are some of the benefits that I did prosper from being a mentee at any stage through your working life. And remember, you don't have to be a young person, an old person to be in a mentoring relationship. It really is anyone in any workplace that may have more experience within that workplace or within that industry, and you're someone new to it. Benefits to the mentors include, though, developing a close working relationship with the mentee, personal growth and professional development, different perspectives on issues, enhanced communication and leadership skills. And remember, I was mentioning before that with my own personal experience, my perspective of employment in workplaces was different to those guys, and I was able to share that even though I was the mentee. Deepen insights into workplace complexities, receive public recognition, a way of making a contribution, revitalise interests in their work, and an opportunity to exert influence in an organisation. So there is lots of benefits for both sides of the fence. And if you are in a workplace and if you have the opportunity to be a mentor, I'd always suggest that you grab it with both hands and take it on if you're feeling like you're up to it. As identified before, benefits for the organisations include increasing the ability to attract and retain talent, because people do value relationships, and people within workplaces with valued relationships tend to stay. Discovery of latent talent, so that those hidden gems within a workforce, you get to prize those out and shine them up and let them go forth and be everything they can be for your workplace. Improved employee commitment, and that's because their workplace is all of a sudden working on an emotional level. Enhanced motivation for managers, retaining corporate knowledge, increased organisational capacity for professional development, enhanced organisational culture and image, and people feeling valued through recognition of individual contributions. And in some ways, it kind of all makes sense on that emotional scale, that when you've got people that are sharing and caring, the whole workplace is going to benefit. It's as simple as that. Chapter 2, we're going to look at and identify the difference between, as it says here, coaching versus mentoring versus training. Because even though some, especially the coaching, the mentoring is kind of so close, there are subtle differences within those two, especially those two topic headings. So there are differences between training, coaching, and mentoring, and in particular, there are subtle differences between coaching and mentoring. I keep on going ahead with, obviously, things I've already written in the past. Although the terms are often used interchangeably, techniques for facilitating individual learning must be identified in terms of learning needs, organizational need, individual learning preferences, and facilitator capabilities. It will be necessary to determine whether training is the best option or whether coaching or mentoring will best suit the needs of the individual learner. Training. Although training can be formal or informal, the term training generally refers to a structured program delivered within a definite timetable, plan and approach, formatted around very specific learning outcomes and performance criteria that's often structured around, as we know, recognised training, including units of competence, qualifications, and maybe training packages themselves. Yet learning can also be delivered through coaching or mentoring processes in the workplace as well. But training is that whole structured, clearly stepped out plan, as we've learned over the last few weeks in an assessment cluster about writing assessments and mapping tools and validation and all that stuff and moderation, all those very formalized processes. Obviously, mentoring and coaching can still work within that framework, but tend to be a little bit looser in its application. Coaching is a valuable method of sharing knowledge and developing skills. Whilst it does not meet the requirements of formal training, if used in some circumstances, it's more effective in passing on knowledge and skills. Coaching is usually more task-specific than mentoring. Coaches focus on helping and guiding development in a particular competency, skill, task, or area of growth. They are usually chosen for their technical expertise. Thus, coaching is a more confined and generally temporary role that ends once the necessary skill has been acquired. And that's, again, we've talked about that within the driver training framework and the benefits of being a coach. And it's quite clear. We have defined goals in mind. And as we lead our clients through that process, they come out the other side and then we move on and they move on. And nothing would highlight that more than people obtaining their driving license. Mentoring mentors build trust-based relationships with the employees that they assist. The supportive relationship goes beyond teaching technical skills. Mentors can provide personal support, friendship, counselling, and guidance with career paths. These activities are not always publicly recognised or observable. And I know, and again, and Alex could confirm this, there's been several workplaces that we've had exposure to or worked within, and they had these really clear active mentoring programs within the workplace, whether they're buddy systems or other systems, but yeah, very active and wanting people to exactly do this, to help one another through not just that technical support, but all those other things that make people the best they can be. The mentor provides credible and suitable learning opportunities for the protege with correct skills enhancement processes and acts as a role model for organisational behaviour and expectations. And the bit here in red is so important. Mentoring is a power-free, two-way relationship. Mentors are facilitators who allow the learner to discover their own direction. Now, that is very, very close to what we say an effective coach and trainer should be, even within the TAE in those more formal settings. We still say that, hey, it should be in some ways a power-free, two-way relationship if we were to adhere to the principles of adult learning. If we think about that from last week, then we were very much talking about the promotion of someone's educational pathway through a two-way relationship, open communication. So again, there starts to be that little bit of blurring of the line between a trainer, a coach, and a mentor. But I guess where it blurs a little bit is in that the qualities, the foundations to which we want either of those three roles to be carried out. It's all about this stuff here. So while mentors can help individuals manage their objectives, this is ultimately the learner's responsibility. A good mentor should possess the following skills. First up, without a doubt, a sound knowledge or experience of the industry or the profession. So you can't pretend to go off and be a mentor for a brain surgeon when, like I said, your expertise is in Microsoft Excel. So individual traits and abilities. You should be a motivating individual. You should hopefully have influence within the positive. an ability to base what you talk about on facts, and have an ability to go and research that material, or if you have questions or queries, that you go off and fact find rather than just base it on hypothetical or emotional judgment, so to speak. Good time management skills, be excellent listeners, be all for staff development, hopefully possess some counselling skills, and obviously a willingness to put yourself out there to enhance a relationship. Obviously, to do that, you need to have a certain amount of enthusiasm, and at the same time, understand the importance of confidentiality. And obviously, any relationship is built upon trust. And anytime you break confidentiality, then you are smashing trust. Chapter 3, establishing the relationship, the program, and its parameters. Cool. Ground rules are the agreed standards of behaviour for participants in the mentoring program. They provide rules for what is and what is not acceptable. Clear agreed ground rules and expectations allow the relationship to progress positively through shared understandings. Funny enough, I wouldn't even call them ground rules. I would actually just call them agreements. Over the last sort of couple of months or so, on a Tuesday night, I was actually going through a mentoring program. It was really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was interesting. On the first night, the facilitator sort of said, "Look, hey, I don't want to have agreed rules, but what I would like to have is a set of agreements." And it was all about how people, communicate and how they treat each other. So rules can be a bit of a, in some ways, the logic or theory behind rules is that you are sort of maybe probably being a little bit, how could I say, patronizing with your mentee, but having an agreed set of values or an identified set of agreements about how the relationship's going to work is certainly already starting it from a much more positive position than saying, hey, these are the rules and I need you to follow them. So when establishing a mentoring relationship, some ground rules that you may want to discuss include commitment, and the commitment of the mentor and mentee to one another and their workplace setting, and to the building of the communities wherein individuals can further their learning and aspirations. So obviously, as it says there, you're committing to one another. You're going to both try to build a relationship, and that is going to be all about supporting both to become the best workers within that workplace, or best sort of work within that workplace as possible, or whatever the goal may be or the setting may be. These benefits are embedded in the mentoring relationship. For them to be realized, the mentoring relationship needs time to develop. And as it does, it goes through some key changes with which the mentor and mentee need to be in tune. And it's amazing that the program that I went to and was on was interesting that so many of the people within that program were actually teachers, and it was to do a little bit with communicating with teenagers. And it was interesting how many of those people were teachers, and how, that whole thing of understanding as you go through a mentoring situation with teenagers, that as they mature and develop and want to keep on, I guess, traveling or going, reaching out further in their obtaining of different experiences, that as a mentor, you need to be in tune with that, and to allow that to occur, because that's a natural thing. And it's the same within this relationship, that as you're maybe the mentor, and you've got this person meant to be, not meant to be subordinate, but again, it's that whole thing that so often people see the mentor as the leader and the mentee as the follower, that it's not that, it's a power-free struggle. But as the relationship develops, that both of you understand when to let go a bit and to be able to step up a bit, and allow that harmony to keep on going. And that's not always an easy thing. And sometimes it only takes the mentor or the mentee to be a week or two behind the other person for things to get a little bit edgy. But as long as you allow for that, and if you're a mentor, keep on understanding when the person's ready to move to the next step and you're to sort of let go a bit. And if you happen to be the mentee, knowing and waiting sometimes and allowing that person a week or two maybe to catch up and understand that you are ready to move on to the next part. Conversation. Conversation is an integral part of mentoring roles and processes. Our conversations can be catalysts or impediments to learning. As factors in learning, conversations shape the social learning capital that accrues. The degree of enthusiasm, comprehension, reflection, action, genuineness of engagement, your respect, and even the affection for others in the conversations we have impacts on the learning. So really genuine, both coming from a genuine space, and that can be hard because if you're the one giving and you don't feel like the other one is giving as much, or likewise the other way around, it can be really hard for any mentoring relationship to ever reach its full potential. So all you can do probably is to bring these emotions and actions to the relationship, and through those set of identifiable agreements or agreed rules, if it's that they reciprocate that. But certainly there's nothing wrong with holding people accountable and saying, hey, this is what I am bringing to this relationship, so to speak, this mentoring relationship that we have. But it seems that, we have these set of rules or agreements, and you don't seem to be at this stage, meeting your part of it. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's good, but obviously having good open conversation and communication is integral to that. So the responsibilities of each party, including that both will attend regular face-to-face meetings, that you'll be on time, you'll identify who will initiate the meetings and prepare agendas at your workplace, and be honest and open. The agreement of the goals of the relationship. There is a recognized system and template in place for establishing the goals in any type of educational mentoring program. And the acronym we use for that is SMART. And SMART goals is the system in place. So as you can see here, what we're saying is anything that underpins the relationship to make it work is obviously first of all the giving of yourself as a person, and then being able to meet the agreed set of values, and that's that you are going to be, you're going to have regular meetings, that you are going to turn up on time, that it will be organized, and it'll be honest and open, and that with those structures in place, or within a structured approach, with the best of intentions in place, it's it really is, you're laying all the foundation for the mentoring relationship to deliver the benefits for everyone involved. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. So we're talking about that the whole mentoring relationship is exactly that it's going to be specific. You'll be able to measure it. What you do put forward as the goals are achievable. They are relevant to the workplace or the work role, and they're time-bound. That it's not something that's just open and will last forever. That there is some set goals, but again, not quite as tight as a timetable or whatever the case may be for a course. All goals should be SMART goals, and that is that they're specific. The goal is clear and to the point. It is obvious what the goal is. For example, I want to complete my traineeship in driving mentoring is a clearly stated goal. Measurable. How will you know if the goal has been achieved? Can you measure progress? So, for example, a goal of I want to be the best driving mentor is not measurable. The goal begs many questions in relation to driver training and so on. And so it's broad and it's difficult to measure the progress towards achieving that particular goal. However, having being able to clearly identify what makes a great driving mentor, and doing like a task analysis in that, or identifying the key components of what a good driving mentor would be, and then listing those down between the two of you as the agreed values, or not the agreed goals of the mentoring relationship, all of a sudden makes it measurable. And that also helps with the success, because not only is there clear goals to drive towards, but at the same time, there's boxes to be able to tick off. And that obviously shows progress, and that keeps people engaged both as mentors and mentees. and needs to be achievable. So it must be a realistic goal. For example, the goal of I want to complete my traineeship in driving mentoring this month may be achievable if the mentee starts the traineeship at the beginning of February. However, if they commence during February, that goal is most likely not achievable. It needs to be relevant. Is the goal relevant to the mentee? Is it relevant to their life choices or work role? And if it isn't, the chances of the goal being achieved become diminished because, as we all know, the principles of adult learning will still kick in. Whether it's Maslow's theory, whether it's some of the other theories we talked about, the one thing that we know for sure is at the moment, any adult can't really see the relevance of them learning a particular topic or participating in a particular set of training, they're going to quickly drop off. And then again, hopefully with a bit of luck, it's time bound to be effective and achievable. Each goal must have a start and end date, which is sounds a little bit contradictory to what we we're talking about early on. But what it is saying is rather than, like I said, running to a complete timetable, we have start and end dates, and there's a little bit of looseness within that structure from those. From the start and the end, where a timetable is clearly specific each time we get together. Building rapport. Rapport is about building respect and about being able to then be able to influence each other. It's essential in any situation where you're seeking to help someone bring about change. Rapport will create the environment in which both of you feel comfortable and able to work with each other. And it is amazing. I was, again, in the PD that we had for driver trainers last Friday. We're talking about a little bit about this stuff and how establishing a relationship is important, because what we know is that in any learning environment, whether it's a young adult with an adult or even when it's with peers, quite often once we get to this point, it's the relationship that keeps people on track or will have people return to complete their goals. And especially if you're dealing with young people, it is the value, it's the relationship they value, and that's what will keep them, like I said, working together with you through the whole program. And it is really no different for adults. If you value one another, if you have a rapport for one another, then you are able to draw commitment, and with that commitment, goals are achieved. Sharing personal experience and networks. The mentee will be looking for you to share your experience and knowledge to help them to grow and improve in their job. Introducing them to important people or helpful organisations where they can turn to for assistance or information is invaluable to them. What are some of the organisations that you could recommend in your industry that would be helpful to new entrants into the industry? So for a moment, all of you, think about where you work and what you do, and who could you recommend to someone entering your workplace? Who could you recommend to help their life a little bit easier and better? Confidentiality. Confidentiality is the key to rapport building, as trust is a major cornerstone of any type of relationship, as you've already heard me bang on about 20 times. Confidentiality agreements can help bridge that gap. Confidentiality agreement is designed to protect confidential information, trade secrets, and expertise, know-how, from being misused by those to whom such information will be or has been disclosed. A confidentiality agreement template, a non-disclosure agreement, should be used in any situation where you're disclosing information that must remain confidential. For example, when approaching a potential partner with your new business idea, you should use a confidentiality agreement to avoid jeopardizing your concept. So you're working within a mentoring relationship, like I said, because you could be providing help and guidance and being a bit of a sounding board. And likewise, the other way around. Hey, welcome to this workplace. Bill, Bob, and Jan are fantastic people. They're always here to help you. Look out for Terry. Terry's a bit of a prick. That stuff needs to, if not that you should maybe doing that, but if that happens to be in you opening up the networks for this person and guiding them through where they should be going and where they shouldn't be going, all that stuff needs to remain confidential. To protect your confidential information, trade secrets, and expertise from misuse, it is prudent to have a signed confidentiality agreement with every person, such as employees and contractors, to whom such information will be disclosed. Parties to the agreement may be companies or individuals or a combination of both. So again, if you're mentoring a person from another organization, but you have a shared interest in an industry, And there are some of those types of cross-workplace programs in place. Or likewise, even within a particular company, there may be different departments. And I know, again, if I take a personal experience, my wife used to be a bank manager. She worked in, she left the managing of branches and went into another part of the bank where they acted almost as a middle person between the bank and the bank's customers. And she would take on mentoring roles with people joining that part of the bank. And all that stuff had to be, there was confidentiality agreements always through those relationships, because she'd be sharing information from the bank's perspective and also sharing information from the client's perspective, because that particular part of the bank did that. They lived in the middle of both, so they could get great results for the bank and great results for the clients. But through that mentoring role, information from both parties would be shared, and confidentiality had to be ensured. So parties to the agreement may be companies or individuals, like I said, or a combination of both. Providing feedback. Again, obviously within any relationship, feedback is so important, and obviously within a mentoring relationship is going to be vital. So we've already had sessions about providing feedback, especially if you guys go back to your driver trainer course with us, and we talked about commend, recommend, commend, the CRC technique, and all the rest of it. Mentoring, as I said, here is no different. Feedback helps people to stay on target and thus achieve goals. It is crucial. It is a crucial component of learning and includes comment, praise, criticism, and suggestions about both your own and the mentee's performance. So an important part of this is to use constructive and supportive feedback, give and receive feedback. Don't forget the feedback sandwich, CRC. There are many other theories and formulas to feedback, but CRC is a pretty easy one to recall and turn back to, and it certainly is effective. And using feedback will go along. We'll use feedback along the way, not just at the end. Conflict will always occur, or can possibly occur, in any relationship, as we know. And it's important as the mentor that you are equipped with the tools to find resolution, because especially, like I said before, if you're not quite on the same page on where you both are sitting within the relationship, the mentoring role, if you're still sort of thinking that you need to be, for want of a better term, heavy-handed, and that other person's feeling like they're ready for the next step or the next step away from you, then stuff like that can really start to cause conflict, because emotions can be really quickly muddled up and confused, and it's only through maybe a lack of communication, but definitely having the tools to find resolution in any type of conflict is super important. There are established systems in place for mentor conflict resolution. To resolve conflict with your mentee, we suggest the following approach. Set the scene. Make sure that everyone understands that the conflict may be a mutual problem, which may be best resolved through discussion and negotiation rather than through raw aggression. Again, the program that I was doing over the last few weeks, they had a great acronym for this sort of stuff dealing with teenagers. It's not quite exactly the same as this, but it's very, very close. But first up, it was about setting the scene, or in that one, they were talking about coming to an agreed time. So you're within a power-based argument. You're both sort of yelling and or with pitched voices, or it's quite clear within any conversation that you're having that you're both agitated. So you recognise that. You say, hey, all right, understand where you're coming from. Obviously, I've got some views that I need to share with you. However, at this stage, let's agree to meet at this time to discuss it further. So it's amazing, by even just getting that first step of agreeing to a time where you'll come back together to discuss it is already giving your conflict resolution a big chance to actually be successful. And it is amazing. Even with teenagers, and I unfortunately for my poor kids, I experimented on a couple of times, but just being able to, when they wanted to have some sort of conflict, saying, hey, can hear what you're saying, totally can understand your concerns are legitimate. However, let's agree to this time to talk about it. It's amazing. It was amazing how they would then come to that conversation the next time in a much better state of mind. Gather information, try to understand your mentee's motivations and goals and see how your actions may be affecting these. So again, as it says there, having some empathy. Agree on the problem. You'll need to agree that a problem exists. You'll not find a mutually acceptable solution if you can't even agree on the problem. And what quite often that pertains to is that when people cannot agree that there's a problem involved, especially the person who's feeling aggrieved, quite often what occurs, and the person who doesn't agree doesn't mean this, but what they tend to do is not even acknowledge that the emotion that they're feeling is real. So what we do know in this situation is that even if you just say, hey, even if you think yourself that you're not totally agreeing on what the issue or the problem is, at least by acknowledging that the emotion they are feeling is real and justified, which it is, whether you believe it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. The fact that the emotion does exist and does exist within those people, even just getting to acknowledge that and say, hey, can completely understand why you'd be upset, and whatever the case may be, and hence why we need to have this meeting tomorrow or later on this afternoon or whatever the case may be, goes a long way. But what we know is that quite often when someone sort of says, hey, I don't even think you're correct with what you're saying, and I don't even understand why you could be possibly upset, or how on earth could you be angry with this? I don't get you. That already creates a huge negative, because the one thing that is for sure is the emotion that they're feeling. And you need to be able to identify that and tell them that you identify that before then you can start to work out on agreeing that there is some sort of problem and what that is. So brainstorming possible solutions. And be open to all ideas, including ones that you'd never considered before. That can be difficult for us, especially if you're the mentor and you've taken on that role of thinking you're the elevated, more important person within the relationship. Your mentee could be coming up with ideas, but because it's not your idea, you can get a little bit stubborn and blocked on opening yourself up to that. So you need to really work on being open and allowing your your active listening to be in place, so you can hear what they have to say and give it a shot. Because again, if quite often once you're in a conflict situation, you're quite closed off. If you're sitting there talking to the person thinking you're open to their ideas and you notice that your arms and legs are folded, then you need to have a good hard look at yourself, because you ain't. Your body language is already telling those people. Your subconscious mind is already running the show. And you'll need to at least understand that if you're sitting there listening with your arms crossed, it's going to be pretty hard for you to take on any information that they have to offer to rectify the dispute. Negotiate a solution. By this stage, the conflict may be resolved. Both sides may better understand the position of each other and mutually satisfactorily find a solution which could be clear to all of them. So set the scene, gather the information, agree on the problem, brainstorm the possible solutions, and then negotiate a solution. And really, if you do that, you're halfway there. You're more than halfway there. Especially, gathering, hearing them, listen to them. What do you think's a problem, and having that empathy. Being big enough to agree there's an issue, and then saying, "Hey, let's work this out together. Tell me what you think we can help. Let me throw in what I think we can do to help." And then all of a sudden, even within a situation of conflict, you've started to promote a teamwork situation. And that, again, reminds everyone subconsciously that you can get along and that you can work together. And together you will get better results than keep on going in a sort of selfish or in an individual basis. Chapter 4, Implementation, the legal requirements and types of mentoring. Planning mentoring. It is obvious that planning is imperative to success, so determine who will be mentored and introduce yourself to them. When the mentoring will occur, as we said, set up the dates and times. Where will the mentoring take place? So establish the environment. Is it on the job? Is it in the workplace? But is it in a lunchroom for half an hour once a week as the last thing you do during the week, or is it the first thing you do on a Monday morning? How often you will mentor, so confirm the availability of both. Again, it's no good if you're working with an apprentice or a trainee within a workplace and you go off to your mentoring meeting and you forget that they're at trade school for the week or whatever the case may be. What activities will you be doing with your mentee, and explain those processes to them. Evaluating the process, so providing feedback along the way, and a completion date, so when your support will end. So having that, introducing yourself, setting up your dates, working out where it's all going to occur, what the goals are, and then having some sort of end goal and end date in mind, and agreeing to that, and then working towards it together across hopefully a positive experience. Here's a mentoring program sort of flow chart for a program that would be where you're, say, for instance, managing a whole group of mentors to work with, in this situation, younger people. So you'd plan the program, you'd set up the supervision process, so working with your mentors. You'd then go off and inform parents and gain consent. You'd identify the students, you would recruit the mentors, you'd prepare the students, you would train the mentors, you'd match the students and mentors, you'd commence the program, you monitor and evaluate, give feedback. If the mentors are needing more work, then you're going to go back, providing them the feedback. If people are saying it was wonderful, it was awesome, and I wouldn't change a thing, then you know that your training is going to be around reinforcing your initial goals and plans for what you had for the program. If the feedback is showing that the mentors are lacking in skills, or we've got a group of upset mentees, then we know that you need to go back and retrain them, or look at what you've done and improve it. And then, like I said, celebrate at the end. So this flowchart would probably work, or be a clear sort of guidance to how the L2P mentoring program has worked over time. So, yeah, pretty sort of clear stuff. You may want to sign a formal agreement for both parties to acknowledge the responsibilities and expectations. And again, it's a mentoring agreement. There's lots of those different pro formas on the internet. They're pretty easy to find. If you were going to go into a mentoring program and you wanted to find some sort of mentoring agreement, you would just search for those, and I have no doubt you would find an example of a pro forma that suits your particular need. And having something obviously signed off and dated in a formal situation can promote a level of commitment to one another and responsibility for one another. There may and will be legal requirements attached to any mentor program. You agree to beyond the topics already discussed, including confidentiality. Make sure that you're aware of any legislative requirements that may influence your mentoring relationship. So for us driver trainers, if you're thinking that driver training is a mentoring relationship, then obviously having a DIA, successfully completing the Cert 4 driving instructor, and all those sorts of things are part of the legislative requirements that you require to be able to fulfill that mentoring role. Legislative requirements may include privacy legislation, equal employment opportunity, anti-discrimination, anti-discrimination between race, age, and gender, any OH&S legislation, like I was saying before, the benefits of OH&S when mentoring programs are doing their thing, sexual harassment legislation, and obviously, like we've spoken in great detail, confidentiality. There may be existing workplace and organisational policy and procedures or protocols that may dictate how you conduct your mentoring relationship. So be aware of any existing training plans and responsibilities, training products and strategies, accepted behaviour or conduct, especially within different workplaces, because you could be playing a mentor. There's an absolute, without a doubt, guys, I'm going to go off on another tangent for a second. Without a doubt, there is employment opportunity in being a professional mentor. Without a doubt, as we've seen, lots of businesses are very accepting and believe quite strongly in the power of mentoring. So you could be a professional mentor, working in and out of different workplaces. So obviously accepted behavior and conduct between all those different workplaces is paramount to you being able to do your job right. And obviously that will also go back to within their formal organisational policies and procedures as well. Understanding of the organisational structure and obviously your OH&S responsibilities within that workplace. To support the implementation of effective mentoring practices, we should identify a number of different types of mentoring that are worthwhile considering in the workplace. So one-on-one, working within close proximity with an individual. There's hubs where it's a single person to many. There's on-site mentoring, which is taking place at the workplace. And of course, there's off-site mentoring, not within the same workplace. So There's quite a few programs that I know Vic Roads used to do one mentoring program where they would send their staff off-site to do this mentoring program over a several-month period. We have an awesome story about that. I won't go into it now, but remind me on Saturday to tell you about the amazing mentoring program that one of Vic Roads' most diligent workers was sent to, and how, as a part of that process, he had a total refocus on his life goals, and probably the mentoring program probably wasn't quite as successful as Vic Roads was hoping, but it's a funny story, and I'll share it with you on Saturday if you remind me. So mentoring type, one-on-one. The pros of that, it enhances commitment of the mentor and the mentee, and it allows a relationship of trust and reciprocity to develop over time. The cons, the negatives to it, it can be expensive on time. It requires clear boundaries and ground rules, and especially if you think about it, if it is one-on-one, and the mentor, you got to be careful that the mentor doesn't feel like they're in the higher being. So establishing those boundaries and ground rules is really important. And it limits the matchings between mentor and mentee. So if sometimes within workplaces, if you're going to go with the one-on-one, you may just run out of good matches. The first two are a great match. The second two are a great match, but the third, no one left on either side of the fence. So bad luck, those two get whacked together, and it's not the greatest of mixes. Hubs. The pros of hubs is it allows and encourages mentees to support and assist one another, which is good. It's not unlike you guys getting together on a Saturday morning. Mentees may develop supportive workplace relationships with one another, and especially within the workplace, when you have these groups of mentees coming together once a week or whatever the case may be to work with their mentor, that time with those people sharing, those peers sharing a similar pathway is always hugely beneficial. It increases the number of mentor-mentee matchings that can be made. The cons, it requires a large time commitment of the mentor. It can be difficult to guarantee equal commitment to each mentee. Requires careful monitoring and management of the group dynamic. And mentees needs to be able to engage with their own mentor relationship in a group setting of other relationships. So so obviously when you get people come together, there's a group of mentors, there's a group of mentees, there's all that bouncing off, which is fantastic, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard for people to still build that one-on-one rapport, just because of the fact that you're in a noisy setting and whatever the case may be, and there's distractions, and some people just don't want to open up when some other person from their workplace or along that, machine line or something that they work with, depending on the relationship between the mentees, it can be a little bit hard for them to open up and be sharing stuff, which can be heard from fellow workers or mentors. On site, obviously there's an enhanced availability for meetings, both planned and impromptu. Can develop mentoring relationships in a shared context over time, and both mentors and mentees are familiar with the workplace context. The cons to that, the negatives, it could be difficult to identify an appropriate mentor who's not the mentee's supervisor or manager, because remember, it is meant to be a little bit power-free. Need to be aware of conflict of interests, and that's true. If you got someone molding someone, or with the potential to mold someone, hopefully like I said, human nature is human nature, and sometimes, just got to make sure there's no conflicts there. And requires clear boundaries around the ground rules, because again, these people are working together. There'll be workplace policy and procedure, and OH&S and other legislation that just can't be breached as a part of that on-site mentoring program. Off-site, the pros are that the mentee has an opportunity to see various workplace contexts, practices and styles, provides opportunities for different perspectives. Mentee may feel more comfortable with the mentor away from their immediate workplace. The mentor is separate from the mentee's management. Distance can enhance a sense of confidentiality, and on-site workplaces can cooperate with other work sites. The disadvantages, of course, it requires mentoring to be organised in advance. Can formalise the mentoring relationship and experience. So all of a sudden, it can be. It can sort of lean more towards a teaching setup. It reduces opportunities for informal ad hoc meetings and interactions, of course, and may limit the development of a close mentoring relationship. So social capital and mentoring practice are closely entwined. building communities, fostering commitment and engaging a sense of collective being while furthering individual aspirations and learning. Mentoring in the workplace develops a collaborative learning culture where teamwork and mentoring become normal social practices. Whatever your reason for being a mentor, you'll find it a special experience. Nothing can quite match the self-satisfaction you get from sharing your experience to help others. If you get the chance, you should get involved so you can experience the rewarding relationship between you and your mentee. As it says there, I hope that helps. I hope you've got a better idea of what mentoring is all about, because again, I've noticed over time, sometimes within, and again, I'm sorry for Tristan and Diane, but sometimes within our forums that we have, I hear, driver trainers talking about mentoring and we should be mentors and all that sort of stuff. And when I ask them to explain to me what they think a mentor is, it's not the information we just went through there. It's more about a person being in an elevated position, someone being in a higher role compared to someone in a lesser role, the learner, and this whole passing down of knowledge and experience, but not really being so two-way. But yeah, so I hope that helps, guys. Any questions? Cool. Alrighty. So if there really isn't any questions, which is awesome, yeah, we'll start at Saturday. We'll start 8 a.m. on Saturday for sure. And then when I turn up at 10 o'clock, I'll be like, suffer, April Fools, Roger. No, we'll be there at 8 a.m. for sure on Saturday, without a doubt. Cool. So, all right, guys, if you're happy with that, we'll leave it at that. Saturday, we'll look at closing off that stuff, and then that'll help us catch up with some of the other material in the coming weeks. No worries. Take it easy, and yeah, don't plan to be there on Easter Saturday.